Good morning, everybody. Thank you. My name is Carlo Smith. I'm at Central Washington University. I'm joined on this presentation with my colleague, Dr. Ozden Bayazit. It is 5 a.m. West Coast time right now, so we appreciate you getting us up bright and early on a Sunday morning to enjoy the day. We want to start out today talking a little bit about an experience in our analysis and going through a faculty search process, utilizing analytic hierarchy process. And make sure I'm on this thing. Okay, hang on just a second. Where is my? There we go. So as you can imagine, there are a number of different, the majority of us, I suspect, are from academic institutions. And when we're going through the faculty search process, we're probably trying to meet a lot of different search criteria coming from a number of different sources. Some of those could be institutional requirements, as in dealing with the human resources folks and any requirements from the university level. For many of us, we have to want to take into consideration the college strategy and the compliance issues. We're a college of business in the United States. We're also a member of ISAHP accreditation. Therefore, there are some, though I will say for any of you in business, you know some of those accreditation requirements are changing. Nevertheless, they do have an impact on the things that we need to consider as we're going through our search process. Department objectives certainly come into play. Now, we're a Department of Finance and Supply Chain Management. We have a relatively strong supply chain program. We have 6 faculty, full-time tenure track. However, in our institution, we also serve multiple locations. So our main campus is 100 miles east of Seattle, Washington. But also we have locations. In fact, Dr. Bayazit and myself are both at locations in the metropolitan area of Seattle. As you can imagine, there's a different student criteria or student profiles that we serve at that location versus our main campus. We have certainly individual insights from different committee members, including aspects of collegiality, interest in research, how can we work together? And of course, there's always that lovely time and logistics of trying to make these things work and the expense that goes into bringing somebody to campus, which is not something that can occur right now, unfortunately, but when it does, it helps out very much. So as you can imagine, there's a variety of different criteria here. Some of it is more individual as opposed to objective. And so we felt it would be a good application to pursue with the analytic hierarchy process. So the relative importance of it in the selection process, we wanted to be able, this is what was our first experience doing this, although Dr. Bayazit has a great deal of experience using AHP, but it was a great opportunity for us to try to, as much as anything, I think, ensure that we have the same viewpoint or have an understanding of each other's viewpoint as we go into the selection process for a new candidate to come on the campus. The ability to compare selection alternatives. And then there are a number of articles out there, certainly within the academic sphere, using AHP and things like strategy development, curriculum development. There is at least 1 or 2 involving search and hiring and some other areas with respect to that. For us, as I mentioned, whoops, gotta watch my finger. We're a regional state university. As such, we tend to be more focused on the student teaching and more of a balanced approach to teaching and research. The focus was on a professor in supply chain management. For us, as I said, we have a relatively robust supply chain program, different people with different expertise. So part of that also has to do with what's the compatibility of the individual's expertise. What are they bringing to the table? How does that relate to our curriculum and areas like that? And we had 3 finalists coming into the screening process that we were doing phone interviews with and preparing for campus visits. And then we used AHP as a means to break down our criteria. So we identified, and I'll show you here in a second on a little bit more of an eye chart, 7 primary areas and then a number of different sub-criteria. Obviously, this is an area where you'll see some commonality amongst schools, but then you'll see the uniqueness that comes out either from the institutional perspective in terms of what our College of Business strategy is, our department strategy, and some of the more common aspects of, what's their research stream and things like that. The search committee members completed a pairwise comparison prior to the search reviews with the candidates. And then we also integrated and reviewed those together to make sure that there was some commonality in how we were looking. So the top 5, and I'll bring them up here, it's kind of like I said, a bit of an eye chart. As you can imagine, the ones that you probably see most common is what is the degree? How does that degree fit? For us, we're looking for somebody either maybe in a supply chain logistics PhD program, maybe management science or engineering. Inevitably, you have other folks from other areas. Their focus of their education might be in a particular area, but their research tends to be in supply chain. The teaching aspects, student engagement, research, service, experience, and diversity. And as you'll see, these aspects of experience and service breakdown, and as also teaching, we bring in really specific elements or specific topic areas of teaching because that was important to us in terms of looking at the compatibility with our curriculum. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bayazit. Ozden, I'll move the slide as you indicate, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Carlo.
So, excuse me. So, Dr. Smith, before Dr. Bayazit starts, could you possibly change the screen because it was difficult to read the previous slide?
Okay.
So if you could change to full screen, I think that would be helpful.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I not have you? Oh, look at that. I'm on the wrong slide.
So sorry to interrupt.
Somebody tell me this. Okay.
I didn't want to interrupt the the flow of your presentation.
So you all knew everything I was going to talk about. Doggone it. How's that? Does that work? Am I sharing the right screen now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Carlo. Good morning. So as Carlo mentioned, by the time we invited 3 finalists to the campus, we constructed the ISAHP model and we identified 7 primary criteria. Once we made the pairwise comparisons, the search committee included myself, Dr. Smith, and another colleague, supply chain colleague. So by the time we made the pairwise comparisons, obviously individually we completed the pairwise comparisons, then we aggregated the results to construct our group choice. So as a result, teaching, not surprisingly, came out as the most important criterion that we consider fulfilling a faculty position with 28% priority. Diversity came out as the least important one, but I bet if we do pairwise comparisons today in the light of recent events in the country, and also because as a College of Business, we initiated lots of diversity programs recently, diversity will get more attention. So those are some sample priorities, sub-criteria priorities. Carlo, can you please move to the, yes, thank you. So those are the, so once we completed the pairwise comparisons, those are all the global priorities for the sub-criteria. Obviously, it was a very time-consuming process to finish all these priorities, but we ended up with 0.07 consistency ratio, which is pretty good. As an example, I know you all know about the priorities, but as an example, for example, for the teaching topics, Intro to Supply Chain Management received the highest rating because in our department, every faculty at some point has to teach Introduction to Supply Chain Management. It is also a core course within the College of Business. So under the teaching topics, it got the highest rating. So
Dr. Bayazit, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So our intention was to compare the final candidates by the time we constructed this model. However, at the end of the visits, none of the candidates stood out, and we felt like, you know, we weren't going to hire anybody, so we have not compared the candidates. So, but this is our future research direction. We will be using this model to compare the candidates to see, which one ISAHP would suggest to fulfill our position. And also we are planning to do obviously a sensitivity analysis to see how robust final outcome will be. Am I on time? Okay. Yeah, if you have any questions, we will be happy to answer.
Thank you for your presentation, and I am sorry for not introducing you because I assume that Professor Smith is the only presenter. Sorry about
that's
that.
Fine. That's perfectly fine.
Okay, do you have any questions?
I have a question. Okay. I have a question. I'm curious. I saw like 10 sub-criteria in under one of the criteria, and yes, like under topics, there are many different topics. I understand they have sub-criteria. If they need to be pairwise compared, I think I mean it's very hard to get a search committee to really do that many number of sub-criteria. I've had experience with trying to use this with committees, and committees try to do the minimum effort, So I'm curious how you got the faculty to do these comparisons, so many comparisons.
I think from my perspective, it was a matter of we know where our expertise lie and we know where our needs are. I think as a faculty, we're a pretty collegial group, even though we're at different locations, many of us. So this created an opportunity to say, where do we see an opportunity? What areas do we feel are most important of the candidate to be able to bring to the table? What particular teaching competencies or areas of research that they might be interested in. So from our perspective, I think because it was a group of 3 of us in that particular department, we had a certainly self-interest in making sure that we had a good blend across the faculty.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Enrique. We have another question. Elio Padano asks, did you explain the criteria to the decision makers, and how long did it take to complete the pairwise comparisons?
Well, it was a very time-consuming process. I don't remember how many days we spent on it, but what was the first part of the question? Sorry.
Did you explain the criteria before the assessment?
Actually, we identified those criteria together at a joint meeting, and also lots of email exchanges to make sure we are on the same page. But yes, decision makers, 3 of us knew the descriptions, the criteria. Actually, we identified the criteria all together.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay, thank you. Actually, I have one. I assume that you did this model for 3 finalists. Have you considered to apply this for pre-elimination of the candidates?
I think that, go ahead, Ozden.
Carlo, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think that's where it would be very daunting, very challenging when depending on how we go about it. If we're going and treating the candidates in pairs to compare versus trying to come up with a ranking criteria of some sort to narrow it down. I want to say in our case, I think we had about 40 some candidates. So it might be that usually, and you guys probably experience this, there are definitely folks that are outliers. So it's kind of when you get to that, the initial round of interviews, which we tend to do via Zoom, and you come up with 8 or so, that's probably the more appropriate place that I think we would utilize it.
And also we have, I should say, we have different set of criteria for pre-screening and post-screening. So that will be another study, right?
Okay.
Because we don't use the same criteria to evaluate candidates before and after.
Okay, thank you. Because maybe applying an AHP rating approach will be useful for pre-elimination.